Hello there, welcome to the Firewatch audio tour. My name is Rich Summer. I voiced the character of Henry, the guy that you're currently controlling with those buttons there. And I'll be chatting with you in a little bit. Thanks for checking it out.
Hi, I'm Sean Vanneman. I wrote the bulk of 100% of this game.
Hey, I'm Jake Rodkin. I did a lot of level design, UI design, and worked with everyone on the story for Firewatch.
The game has this weird structure that Chris and I talk about in another tape. This is the first thing I wrote, was this opening of the game that jumps between Henry's life and the trip out to the woods. And I used a little product called Twine to do that, which you can download and use. It's just a very simple choose-your-own-adventure tool. The simplest way to program a video game that one can then share with friends and play.
I think we were worried that the team would sort of perceive Henry as a blank slate, as sort of a generic game player protagonist, and we wanted to make sure, or we wanted to get in everyone's mindset, you're playing as a specific guy with a specific life.
Yeah, there's a reason when you play video games that a lot of your protagonists have amnesia, because it's really difficult when you're driving a character around who knows things about their life, or his or her life, that you, who you ostensibly are that person, don't know. So, yeah, we kept trying to write an opening of the game that happened sort of like weeks into Henry's experience, and then quickly realized that it was like, well, why would he not be able to say X? Well, because his relationship with his wife is Y. So, but the player doesn't know that. Yeah. And this was the quickest way to get everybody on board, was to just take the thing that I wrote that answered the question, I think, for Jane and you at the beginning, which was like, who is Henry? And I would write these character profiles that were really bad. And then I went, what if I just let you play a thing? And then you can figure out who he is. And we held on to that until we had the idea to put into the game.
It means that when you're playing Firewatch and Henry and Delilah start talking about Henry's wife, you don't have to learn it through his dialogue, because you made the choices that brought him where he is today. Hi, it's Jake again.
Hey, I'm Chris Remo.
Oh, hey, Chris.
Hi there. I was a game designer and the music composer on Firewatch.
Nice.
So you're hearing now the first piece of interactive music that went into Firewatch. The first piece of music that actually
responds to what you're doing in the game?
Exactly, yeah. So this is a piece of music that's divided into technically 6 parts. And what's happening is, as you're playing through this introductory sequence, When you hit certain points in the narrative, it sends a signal to Wise, which is the name of the audio middleware we're using, and then when Wise gets that signal, it waits until the next sort of musically appropriate transition point, and then when it hits that, it smoothly transitions into the next section of music, and so it creates the effect that you're just listening to one big long piece of music that just happens to be timed very nicely
It just
to your
happens.
playthrough.
It just happens to get sadder and sadder at the exact rate that your life gets sadder and sadder.
Yeah, exactly. This was a challenging process, both because I had no idea what the music should sound like, and also because it was the first interactive piece of music in the game. So the technical sort of just how does this work was also a part of it. But as it turned out, this music was changed. I mean, Jake, you may remember this. This music changed relatively little over the course of development in comparison to a lot of.
I think it started off as maybe 3 pieces and it expanded out to 5 over development. But other than that, it's one of the first things dropped in, shipped. Get ready to hear about that a lot on this commentary.
I'm Nels Anderson, and I was a designer and gameplay programmer on Firewatch.
I am Jane Ng, and I worked on the 3D environment art in Firewatch.
So you're likely standing at the base of your home away from home. You're home in the wilderness. For all intents and purposes, more or less, this is basically just a real straight-up tower like they existed out in the woods, right?
Yeah, I think it is Portland. There's somebody in Portland who was very good about archiving a lot of blueprints about various type of fire lookouts of the state, and we got some, and that's how we started off building the lookout tower, just by looking through how they were actually built.
It's slightly taller than a real one, right?
We had to make quite a bit of adjustments because, for example, the stairway you see here, normally fire lookout stairways are not on the outside, but for more interesting gameplay and views for the player, we opted to change that. But ultimately we still wanted the tower to feel like a real tower, so we had to figure stuff like, hey, how does the plumbing actually work? How do they get water? Stuff like that. It actually is very important for a real tower.
And if you go look around the base of the tower, you will actually see a big old plastic cistern.
We are not a survival game of any sort, but it is important to make sure that all that stuff is actually thought out, so the space feels realistic.
Right. You don't want someone playing the game being like, wait a minute, there's no how does this guy drink? How is he not dead?
When I normally play video games, I'm always interested in stuff like, hey, where's the bathroom? Here we have the outhouse and you can go anywhere, but stuff like water is very important. So in a real fire lookout situation, what they do is they will use a cistern, and they will capture rainwater from the roof, and you will actually see that we actually have a little pipe down from the roof, and we even have what they call a first flush filter being there, which is actually what they use.
That's my favorite kind of filter, really.
I had to look up what do they do, because once you go, okay, you collect rainwater from the roof, it won't be all nasty, and then hey, somebody already figured that out on how to collect rainwater. What do you know?
We actually visited a number of different lookout towers as we were researching the game, and it was always very satisfying to see elements of things we saw in the real world and make their way back into the game, and vice versa.
So we also made sure to have a tab here, like a little faucet, where you can actually get water from the cistern.
Yeah, if you click on it, it will play an animation of a hand gripping a knob, and water comes out for 2 seconds. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
But it's there.
I think for a while we actually were thinking, should we just let the player turn on the water? Or then what happens if the water just runs out? And then James had a very good idea of just going just make one animation that you turn on the faucet and turn it off immediately, just so that you know, hey, there's water in here and you won't die. That's Henry.
Hello, Two Forks Tower.
Hello? Whoever this is?
It's Henry, right?
Yeah.
I'm Delilah.
Yeah, that's what the guy said on the phone.
So, what's wrong with you?
Excuse me?
People take this job to get away from something. So, what's wrong?
What's wrong with you?
That's a great idea. Go ahead.
Look, I just hiked for 2 days, so I don't really follow whatever it is you're doing right now.
You take a stab at what's wrong with me.
Fine, then can I sleep forever?
Sure, buddy. Okay, now go ahead. You're just gonna wait me out on this? Ugh, fine. But I'm gonna take a second here and have a guess about you. Let's see. I don't know anything about you. But maybe you just really like trees. Maybe it's... Gosh, maybe it's a borderline fetish. A tree fetish.
Good night.
Good night. Welcome to the job. Henry. Well, I guess good afternoon. You probably slept like a rock. Anyway, there's still a few hours of daylight to get some work in. I can see you at your desk, so call me when you're ready.
Hey, sorry. Guess I slept in.
You got a relaxing, 14 hours of sleep? Whew.
Yeah, Jesus. I guess it's 6?
6:45.
Whoops.
Don't worry about it. That hike puts everyone out of commission for a day or two. But now that you're up, let me quickly get you acquainted with the job. There's a thing in the middle of your room with a round map on it. Do you see it? It's right in the middle of your room. You can't miss it.
Okay, yeah, I see it.
This is the Osborne Firefinder, invented in 1914 by W.B.
Osborne?
You use this to spot, you guessed it, What the fuck?
What is it?
Nothing. You use this to... Oh, fuck me!
Good God, language, lady.
Out your west-facing window. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Are those fucking fireworks? I need you to confirm. Do you see them? Seriously, are you seeing this? Henry?
Nels, it feels like you on the team did the most sort of digging about what the real job is like, what is in the actual space, and then checked us against reality when we kind of went off the reservation.
In general, I really like doing research. That's sort of a thing I've enjoyed on all the projects I've worked on. So for this, a bunch of folks on the team read this great book called Fire Season by Philip Connors, which is kind of like a memoir-ish thing from this dude who still is an active fire lookout even today. But I also just I called up the Ministry of Forests and Natural Resources here in British Columbia and got redirected to like 3 increasingly small Ministry of Forest offices until someone just gave me literally the phone number of this cool old lady who had once been a fire lookout. So I just kind of chatted with her for like an hour and a half just about what doing the job was like. The reason why the game is not a simulation of being a fire lookout is because what everyone talks about is that the number one challenge with the job is that it is incredibly, impossibly boring.
Because you can't, like, read a book. You can't, like, be doing other things, right? Like,
Not really.
Yeah.
At the end of day 3, where Delilah mentions, it's like, Kenny's like, well, what do I do for the rest of summer? She's like, you sit in that chair and you look out the window. That is actually what fire lookouts really do. So all the folks I talked to said, like, figuring out ways to combat boredom is the number one thing. The lady I talked to, she said she did a whole lot of needlepoint and cross stitch because you can do that without looking at your hands very much. Obviously, like, lookouts are also responsible for doing, maintenance on their towers. But again, it's like not maintenance because some crazy Yahoo smashed up your tower. It's maintenance like, oh, the paint is kind of flaking off. Better paint it. Or these trees have grown too tall, so I need to chop them down. Not, I'm chopping down trees to form a weird log bridge.
The main takeaway from whenever we would talk to someone who had done this job is, why would you make a game about that? That is the most boring time of my entire life. So hopefully we showed them how.
It feels like people who do this job like fall into two camps, right? They're the people who think they can do it and can't hack it and bail after like a month or two. People like Jack Kerouac, who tried to do this and wrote about it in Desolation Angels, and then he went crazy from a lack of cigarettes and then left. Or the people who kind of enjoy the solitude and then figure out ways to deal with it. But, we do have, like, a lot of the window dressing for the stuff people use. Like, other folks I talk to, it's like, what do you do? Well, we read a lot of books. And we, like, trade the books between the different lookouts through rangers and stuff like that. So, of course, Firewatch has a crap ton of weird books in it. Stuff like that.
Hi there, it's Jake.
And Chris again.
Hey, so here we are in the cache box clearing, or at least I guess that's what we call it. There's a lot of cache boxes in Firewatch, but this was the first one that we placed into the game.
For a long time, this was the cache box.
It was the cache box, even though we knew we wanted to have more. This area was actually one of the first areas that we've built out to any degree that looks like a piece of the world. It was a really good proving ground for us. Like, when me and Nels Anderson were grayboxing the world at the very beginning, we tried a million different things, like maybe this was on the edge of a cliff, or maybe it was a secret that you had to find. And I think it was Sean who suggested that he really wanted it to feel like a warm, sort of enclosed space, like you've stumbled onto a little glen and you want to stay there for a while, which I think makes sense because we wanted people to actually stop and poke around and have it not feel like the woods.
This was an area with a lot of firsts. I remember this really ended up looking a lot like Ollie's concept art in a way I think that felt like an accomplishment when it all got built out. It was also the first audio I implemented in the entire game, I believe.
The Foley on the locks and the lid?
Right, exactly.
Oh, this was also, the cache box was also our proving ground for detailed object interaction with Henry animating the lock. And also, there is an exit out if you back up and turn left. That was the first time I prototyped one-way drops and also any like sort of secret paths, because the way that you cross the canyon also showed up here, and I didn't tell anyone on the team about it for like months, and people only noticed it once they started playing the back half of the game, and it was very fulfilling for me.
Nice.
Cache box.
Cache box, land of firsts and secrets.
That's the state flag of cache boxes.
This vista is incredible.
Which one?
Down the hill from my tower. There's a canyon and then the rest of... well, everything.
Yeah, you should see what I'm looking at. An eagle has been hovering over this gorge for the past hour. Maybe if you're good, you can come by and see it at the end of the summer.
Jake,
Oh, hey, Sean.
you did a neat thing here in the game that I like a lot, which is when you make a dialogue choice with Delilah about what this dangerous hill should be called. It shows up on your map, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, when we were putting the map system together, well, actually, the map weirdly was one of the latest things, one of the final things to come into the game as a fully fleshed out piece. But an upside of that is we built the map using a lot of tools we already had. For instance, the system that checks which things you haven't talked about, which things you haven't found in the game. Use the same variable list as our speech system. So when I was putting this together, I realized, oh, not only can I put a mark down on the map when Henry finds it or talks about it, but I can totally look at the same tools we use for dialogue and figure out what the player said and put it on the map. And the end result felt really natural. I actually wish we'd gone a little deeper on it in the game, but I'm really happy with what's in there right now. Also, please name this shitty boss is going to get me killed, because that's objectively the best name for the hill.
Is that your handwriting?
Yeah, you got to cram that in there, but it's still readable.
This shale slide is steep. How do you expect me to get down this?
I don't remember it being that bad. It's not even named on our topos.
How do you expect me to get down this?
Well, did you get that rope?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, just lash it to something nearby and take it slow.
Nope. No, no, no! Oh. Hey,
What the hell's wrong with you?
my rope snapped coming down the shale slide.
You didn't break anything, did you?
No, I think I'll make it.
Well, be careful for Christ's sake.
It is a hell of a nice camping spot down here by the lake.
I haven't been down there in years, but yeah, Jonesy Lake area is perfect.
I'm staring at the big outcropping down here, but I'm not quite sure where to look for our pyrotechnicians.
Maybe keep heading west toward the lake.
Hi, this is Ollie Moss, and I was the art director on Firewatch.
I'm Jane.
Hi, Jane.
Let's talk about this teen
Let's
party
talk about
zone.
Let's talk about the Teen Zone. So the Teen Zone is one of the first areas that we used as a sort of art test to see how we would go about building the rest of the game.
We knew from the pretty early on that, like, on day one, you will start from the tower, and you will have to head down to the lake, and somewhere in between, you will see some teens, and they're partying. And so we called this the teen zone because this is where all the teen stuff is.
Yeah, and it was important to us that the reveal that it was a group of teens was communicated through the level design. So the idea was that you just kind of like walk through some trees and burst out into this scene where a campfire was still burning.
And you had a pretty strong idea of what you wanted to look like.
Yeah, I just wanted to put some big angular rocks in there, which is basically the like my modus operandi for the entire game. But we wanted to have a big angular sort of rock, which became known as Pride Rock because it looked so much like the rock from The Lion King.
We did name that Pride Rock, didn't we? That rock does serve as a very strong landmark pretty early in the game, and it kind of does point the player in the right direction.
Exactly. Should we talk a little bit about our process for designing these areas?
So in the beginning, when we just have like no concept art, we will just mock it out with just gray, literally just gray boxes and a gray terrain. And then we will take screenshots and give it to Ollie to be like, please pretty this up, Ollie.
Oh, well, first of all, I'll do a terrible garbage sketch and pitch it to the team. And if people like the gist of it, then we'll go away and do a bit more of a detailed drawing, and then you would go.
Yeah, we'll add in some more shapes. And then we just keep going back and forth with paint overs from Ollie.
And then it's just a sort of tennis, really, just back and forth between the two of us until everyone's happy with what we have.
Yeah.
There's a critter out here. A raccoon.
I can't understand you.
Because I'm whispering.
Because you're whispering. Pears, pears, pears! Yes!
Are you okay? You didn't just have a stroke, did you?
No!
Do you smell burnt toast?
No.
Then what then?
I'm doing a crossword and I figured out the theme. It's homonyms. Pears, pears, pears. The clue was couples peeling fruit. Anyway, hope you're having a good afternoon.
Thanks.